I'm happy that justice is being served.
Dalton trustee Brittany Norwood responds to the recent federal subpoena issued on Monday at Dalton Village Hall, which requests all payment records, expense reimbursements for DUMS, and credit card expenditures for Mayor Henyard.
They're questioning the finances because that's been a real big concern of mine as a board member. We've been wondering how the money is being spent.
The FBI chief has reportedly broken his silence regarding the investigation into Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, revealing disturbing details that have shocked the nation. His statements have raised serious concerns about alleged corruption, abuse of power, and potential criminal actions within Henyard's administration. Once seen as a bold leader dedicated to the community, Henyard is now facing intense public scrutiny, with growing calls for accountability as federal authorities examine the web of accusations surrounding her tenure. In a related development, Henyard faced a contentious and often hostile meeting at the annual Thornton Township gathering. As township supervisor, Henyard is no stranger to public challenges, but this meeting marked an especially difficult evening. Board members and residents voiced their frustrations, with Henyard being loudly booed multiple times. At one point, Henyard remarked that it was unfair for residents to ask so many questions about the township's operations, claiming that other communities didn't face the same level of scrutiny. This comment only fueled tensions in an already charged atmosphere. During a press conference addressing the growing concerns about Henyard's case, FBI chief refrained from revealing specific charges but acknowledged the investigation involves significant and disturbing potential crimes. He alluded to unethical practices and actions by Henyard that may cross into criminal activity. Re-emphasized that the citizens of Dalton deserve transparency, accountability, and honest representation from their elected officials, with the investigation aiming to uphold these values. Federal authorities have reportedly expanded their probe to include several potential crimes, including financial misconduct, fraudulent contracts, and abuse of power. Sources familiar with the investigation claim Henyard may have directed taxpayer money toward questionable projects that benefited her or her associates, bypassing proper bidding processes. This has raised concerns about financial mismanagement and possible corruption. Additional allegations suggest that Henyard may have pressured local law enforcement and municipal staff to disregard policies in order to maintain control over Dalton and eliminate opposition. Insiders claim that officials who resisted Henyard's directives were mistreated or terminated. One of the primary accusations against Henyard centers on the alleged misappropriation of city funds and the awarding of fraudulent contracts. Investigators believe substantial financial resources from Dalton may have been diverted to personal interests or funneled to Henyard's associates, often with little or no benefit to the community. Several trustees have raised concerns about costly or unfinished projects, with no clear evidence that funds were used appropriately. Many residents have questioned the lack of progress on promised infrastructure improvements and community development programs, which now appear to be mismanaged or empty promises. This frustration eventually led to federal authorities reviewing the town's financial records and contracts to investigate Henyard's involvement in questionable transactions. Even more troubling are allegations of bribery and blackmail involving local officials and residents. Several community members have claimed they were offered bribes or favors in exchange for leniency on issues such as permits or property assessments. Others report facing intimidation tactics designed to silence criticism of Henyard's administration. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Henyard may have used coercive tactics, threatening political and personal consequences against anyone who challenged her authority. Several trustees have stated that Henyard leveraged her position to gain control over key community initiatives, offering political favors or penalties depending on whether officials supported or opposed her. As tensions rise, trustees have expressed concerns for their safety, requesting that future gatherings be relocated to larger rooms with multiple exits. This request followed a series of tense confrontations during the meeting, and trustees feared for their physical security. One trustee has a restraining order against Keith Price, a prominent member of Henyard's team, due to his history of aggression. Price's reputation for hostility has long been a point of contention within Dalton's local government, with many officials feeling his presence only heightened the already tense atmosphere. Despite mounting pressure and the ongoing investigation, Henyard remains determined to hold on to her position, showing no signs of backing down or compromising. Her intransigence has led many to speculate whether the conflict will result in more legal battles. The question now is whether this dispute will lead to court hearings to determine where future meetings will take place or address broader issues surrounding Henyard's leadership. With the FBI investigation intensifying and the local political climate growing more charged, Dalton is facing an uncertain future. As federal authorities continue to examine every aspect of Henyard's administration, it remains to be seen if she can maintain her grip on power. One thing is clear: the people of Dalton, along with the nation, are watching closely, hoping that justice will ultimately prevail.
Making a late appearance at the Dalton Village Board meeting this evening. That meeting was being held at the Park District building since Village Hall cannot legally accommodate the crowds at a typical meeting. But Henyard tried to hold a separate board meeting at Village Hall anyway. She had to abruptly cancel it after not enough trustees were there.
A month has passed, and the township remains unable to conduct business effectively. There are bills that need to be paid, and the agenda is lengthy, covering a range of issues from approvals to proposals. The board needs to approve an employee assistance program, and the supervisor is expected to explain her plan for providing a full 100% tax refund to homeowners. While this tax refund is on the agenda for a decision, it's unclear why Henyard is still seeking approval for it, as it's already been outlined. Additionally, there are proposals for bonuses for township employees and a forensic audit. Despite the numerous important matters on the table, progress has stalled due to the supervisor's refusal to compromise. Trustee Carlisle has even expressed concerns about feeling unsafe in the current environment. As an elected official, Carlisle is trying to make things work, but Henyard's rigid stance and unwillingness to engage in meaningful negotiation have made it difficult to move forward. The situation has become so tense that business is being held up, and the township's operations are at risk. One particularly troubling issue is the person in charge of security, Keith Price, who is also the individual against whom Trustee Carlisle has a restraining order. It's hard to understand why Carlisle should feel safe with him overseeing security, especially when she has a legal order against him. Personally, many would find it unsettling to know that the person they have a restraining order against is responsible for managing their safety. Price has been a polarizing figure at meetings, often drawing attention for his aggressive behavior. There's even a documented incident where he screamed at Trustee Gonzalez, cursing and insulting him. Price has also been seen in restricted areas of the village, areas meant for employees only, despite not being employed there. This creates an atmosphere of intimidation and discomfort, particularly for anyone with a history of conflict with him. The larger issue seems to be Henyard's leadership style. She has surrounded herself with individuals who foster a hostile environment, and her extreme stubbornness has made any progress nearly impossible. If she disagrees with someone, she refuses to budge, creating a dynamic where Henyard seems to insist on asserting her dominance, regardless of the consequences. For example, Henyard refused to acknowledge Trustee Gonzalez's presence, even though he had informed the clerk he had arrived. This lack of respect for fellow officials and the process is emblematic of Henyard's approach to leadership. A pivotal moment occurred during an interaction with a critical speaker, which revealed Henyard's reluctance to engage constructively with opposition. Instead of addressing concerns, Henyard pushed away anyone who challenged her authority, further highlighting her unwillingness to collaborate. This situation has reached a point where the township's operations are at risk, and the lack of compromise is preventing any forward movement.
Tiffany Henyard now accuses village trustees of holding an illegal meeting. In court documents, Henyard, along with trustees Andrew Holmes and Stanley Brown, are suing the village clerk, 3 trustees, the village administrator, and the Dalton Park District.
The situation in Dalton Township continues to deteriorate under Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership, marked by increasing instability and rising concerns about safety. Despite months of stalled progress and unresolved issues, Henyard has yet to address key matters, leaving bills unpaid and important decisions unresolved. With a packed agenda that includes the approval of an employee assistance program, a full 100% tax refund for homeowners, employee bonuses, and a forensic audit, the township is facing critical issues that require immediate action. However, no progress has been made, and the root of the problem lies in Henyard's refusal to compromise or take responsibility for the tense environment she has created. Trustee Carlisle, in particular, has voiced her growing concerns about the lack of security and the volatile atmosphere surrounding meetings. While Carlisle, as an elected official, is committed to serving the people, the situation has become untenable. Her discomfort is understandable, especially since the person in charge of security, Keith Price, is the same individual against whom Carlisle has a restraining order. Price's involvement in the township's operations raises serious questions about safety, particularly given his history of aggression. It's hard to understand why Henyard, who claims to be working toward a safe environment, would leave security in the hands of someone with such a controversial history. This situation is compounded by Henyard's inconsistent and misleading statements about the township's financial surplus, which has become a recurring talking point. At various times, she has claimed the surplus is anywhere from $9 million to $4 million, and back to $4 million again, with no clear explanation or supporting data. The constantly shifting figures, combined with a lack of transparency, have left both residents and trustees frustrated and confused. Henyard seems to take pride in her public statements about the surplus, but it's clear that no one, including her own administration, knows the true amount. This inconsistency only raises more questions about her ability to manage the township's finances, especially as she continues to push for re-election and even a bid for supervisor. Her inability to provide clear, accurate details on such an important issue underscores a broader pattern of mismanagement. In addition to the ongoing financial confusion, Henyard's administration is characterized by a toxic work environment and escalating tensions among officials. There is a clear pattern of intimidation and hostility toward those who voice concerns. Trustees who disagree with Henyard are met with cold stares and hostile glares from her inner circle, including Keith Price and Kamal Woods, a close ally. This deliberate tactic stifles opposition and asserts control over meetings, not just to keep things under wraps but to make anyone who disagrees feel unwelcome and unsafe. This has become the standard operating procedure in Dalton's government under Henyard's leadership. The atmosphere of intimidation reached a tipping point during a recent meeting when Trustee Carlisle was interrupted repeatedly by a woman in the audience. While it's not uncommon for emotions to run high at town halls, what stood out was Henyard's response or lack thereof. When Carlisle called out Henyard for not addressing the disruptive behavior, Henyard laughed it off, dismissing the situation entirely. This moment made it painfully clear why no one feels safe in these meetings. When the person in charge of maintaining order, the mayor herself, laughs off serious disruptions and refuses to take action, it sends the message that dissent will not be tolerated and that those in power can act with impunity. Henyard's dismissive attitude toward public criticism is concerning, and her failure to address disruptions in meetings highlights a broader problem with the township's governance. It's one thing to allow people to express their opinions, but it's another to let them be silenced by intimidation. The fact that Henyard didn't intervene when Carlisle raised a legitimate concern suggests that the mayor is more interested in protecting her allies and maintaining control than in fostering an open and safe space for discourse. The safety concerns have been further compounded by Henyard's dismissive attitude toward the logistics of meetings themselves. At one point, she mentioned there were 2 meetings a month, but it remains unclear when the last meeting actually took place. While the township has ample space, the real issue is security. Trustees and residents need a meeting environment where they can feel secure enough to engage openly without fear of intimidation. Henyard's failure to address these security concerns is part of a broader pattern of neglect that is undermining the township's ability to function properly. A turning point came when Trustee Carlisle and other officials began drawing a line in the sand. They've had enough of the intimidation tactics and are ready to stand up for real change. If things don't improve, they are prepared to walk away from the table. This is no longer just about political disagreements, it's about basic safety and respect for the democratic process. The trustees have endured verbal attacks and threats, to the point where one had to file a restraining order against a township employee. This level of hostility cannot be ignored any longer. The situation is escalating, and Henyard must take action before it spirals further out of control. What's becoming clearer by the day is that Henyard's camp thrives on these negative conditions. She has surrounded herself with individuals who contribute to the toxic atmosphere and who enable her to maintain control through fear and intimidation. Instead of addressing these issues, Henyard continues to try to shift the narrative and portray herself as someone dedicated to creating a safe environment. But the facts speak for themselves. Since Jerry Jones's departure, the township has been unable to achieve quorum, let alone conduct effective meetings. Without addressing the security risks and the escalating hostility, the township is heading toward a breaking point. The lack of clear leadership and accountability will only further erode confidence among both officials and residents. At this point, Henyard must take immediate action to restore a sense of safety and order to the township. If she continues to turn a blind eye to the escalating tensions and the genuine concerns raised by her own trustees, higher authorities will likely have to step in. This situation is no longer just a matter of political disagreement, it's about ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone involved in the township's governance.